The relevance of child abuse and neglect to law enforcement and medical professionals. Law enforcement typically receives word of child abuse and neglect that has occurred and then investigates and decides how to punish those who are suspected of the neglect or abuse. So this could be arrest, taken to jail, and then possibly even booked and then just let go. Um, and sometimes, too, they will receive calls on the abuse and neglect, usually over 911, if it is currently occurring in the home and someone from within the home is calling 911. Medical professionals usually report a child with injuries inconsistent to normal child injury to CPS, who then comes in and investigates that and usually reports that also to then the police. Um, Many social workers are also placed and work within hospitals and help the families who are involved with child abuse and neglect with providing programs. Um, Medical professionals also treat the injury that is a result of child abuse or neglect. How these professions view child abuse and neglect. To begin, law enforcement views child abuse and neglect as a punishable act that requires investigation and services. This is usually of the suspected individual around this incident of child abuse and neglect. Law enforcement sees abuse and neglect as a crime, a punishable crime. However, medical professionals see child abuse and neglect as being dangerous as well, but they want to help the abused child feel better physically and mentally. So their central focus is around the child involved in the abuse and neglect. How the medical profession and law enforcement viewpoints relate and differ to each other and to social work. Law enforcement's viewpoint is more about crime and that a crime was committed and how they will punish someone who has abused or neglected a child. A medical professional is about helping the abused and hurt children and want them to get better physically and mentally rather than worrying about what should happen to the abuser and neglector. So going off that, law enforcement is more concerned about who the abuser and neglector is and how they will deal with this person. But they are both similar to social work in the way that they hope for the best for the child that was abused or neglected and want them to succeed and get help for their situation.
Social work, law enforcement, and medical professionals are all similar because their goal is to help the abused and neglected children who need it, but they do this in different ways. The viewpoint of law enforcement differs from that of social work because social workers want to push for legislation and programs to aid their job in providing services to the abused and neglected. Law enforcement is more looking at three disciplines being social work, law enforcement, and medical professions. It is easier to understand the different sides of a complex issue like child abuse and neglect. Social work, law enforcement, and medical professions all work together in providing relief to the victim and the family. It is obvious that none of these professions want to see child abuse and neglect occur or continue to occur. These disciplines combine help to assure that all aspects of the issue are covered and that the whole story is heard. Some deal with the direct aftermath of the abuse and neglect, while others are more long term in providing services to the family and child. The three disciplines of social work, medical professions, and law enforcement are really able to work together to address all sides of the child abuse and neglect issue. Social workers help the family system as a whole and try to prevent this event from happening again. The medical professionals treat the victims and keep them healthy in the short term. Law enforcement punishes those who committed the act of violence or neglect against a child. All three sides of this story are covered by these professions. The victim is taken care of, the family or bystanders are heard, and the suspect is prosecuted.